And you know, Greg, sometimes you just put a book down and it opens up to a page. I did get that book back, opened it up, and chapter 8, Mitsubishi, Empire of Exploitation. I just started reading it. And she talks about POW camp in northern Japan, in the mountains, in a copper mine, which hasn't been used in years and years. And I said, my God, that's where my brother was. His backstory was, he was on MacArthur's staff. Not anything up, but you know, he was a member of the staff. And they were in Manila. And then as things got hot in Manila, they moved to Corregidor. And then, of course, that's where MacArthur left from Corregidor. And my brother did not go with him, obviously. So when the Japanese took over captured Corregidor, he was captured there. It's interesting, we mentioned my brother was a Japanese prisoner. Anytime you say that, oh, he was in the Death March. No, he was not in the Death March. He was captured on Corregidor. So that was it, and he was there. And
how long was he there for, in prison war?
Well, 3.5 years.
Wow.
The Japanese invasion of the Philippines was conducted on schedule. The first landing was made on December 8th. And during the 2 weeks following, beachheads were successfully secured at 6 points in the archipelago. Finally, on May 5th, 1942, Japanese assault units crossed the narrow channel separating Luzon from Corregidor and stormed the rock's sturdy defenses. After nearly 24 hours, fighting on the island ceased on May 6th. That afternoon, General Jonathan Wainwright, the American commander, met with General Hanawa on nearby Bataan Peninsula to effect the surrender.
Bataan fell in April, and Corregidor fell in early May. Mm-hmm. And that was when he became a POW. And then he was there for a while, and then on one of the hell ships to Japan, and from there up to the city, a town called Hanawa up in northern Japan, in the copper mine. And he said, they were deep, and the guys were down in the copper mine, and they thought they were doing me a favor by letting me stay up on top. And they weren't. I was cold. It was colder than hell. And you didn't get sick. If you got sick, missed work, you didn't get fed. And it was pretty rough. But he came out with a legally blind eyesight from malnutrition and took a couple of bashes in the face. His nose was broken over it. But anyway, he made it through. And I came home in late 45. And that's his story.
What's your name, soldier?
I'm Private First Class Alvin James Aubuchon, sir. St. Louis, Missouri, sir.
St. Louis. Born and raised there?
No, sir. Born in Chicago. Raised in St. Louis, you might say.
And when did you come overseas?
I came over here in 1941 on April 22nd on the USS Republic.
So you were in the Philippines when the Japanese attacked?
Yes, sir, I was. Captured on Corregidor on May 6th. 42, sir.
I see. So you missed out on the Death March, didn't you?
Yes, sir. I was fortunate to miss out on that.
That's one of the things that sticks in the minds of most of the boys.
Yes, sir. We had a pretty rough time of it. It had its good points, but there were few, believe me.
Did you get into any scrapes with the nips yourself?
Well, I got in one particular instant with a Japanese that spoke fair English, and I was digging a ditch around a gasoline storage house, and we got in a rather halfway conversation about the two countries, and he insisted that the Japanese flag would always fly above the American flag. Of course, everybody stopped working, and he asked me if I thought that the American flag would ever fly below the Japanese flag. I told him no, it never would. I told him the American flag would rise in the Philippines and all over. Well, out of that, why, he insisted that I ought to have a little trashing. So I don't know. I just took a beating for about 2 hours, you might say, and then his friend took over, and that was just one instant there.
What did he beat you with?
Well, he started out with his hands and ended up with a club, and he was going to draw his bayonet, I think. He made an attempt for it, and one of the Japanese officers came over there and stopped it, and that was the end of it.
Oh, yes. I remember my brother was in the Philippines then. And I was, Sunday afternoon, I was in the movie to show double features. There were movies in town. So I came out of the movie, there was a lot of them on the street, chatter, what's happening? The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor. What? So I ran home, and of course I know Pearl Harbor was attacked. Would the Philippines be far behind? And they weren't, of course. So I got home, my mother and father were giving to the radio, and that was it.
Was that tough on your mom?
Yes, very tough. We didn't know for approximately 2 years, I don't remember exactly, but 2 years that he was a POW. All we knew officially was listed as missing in action. And then it was a couple of years, about 2 years, I think, we got a postcard from the Red Cross or somebody that he had written, and that's when we knew that he was alive.
So did you suspect he was dead?
We didn't know.
Yeah.
Missing in action for 2 years, what are you going to think?
Yeah, that's right.
So, but my mother took it very hard. She kept pretty much herself, except I would catch her crying. But obviously it bothered her.
Sure.
David was gone, Joe was gone, Tony, God knows where he was. And I was home through most of it, and I was the guy who got the telegrams.
Yeah.
That was brutal. Missing in action.
Yeah. Well, what was the reaction when you finally got the note from him, from your brother?
A postcard.
Yeah.
Well, obviously it was still a POW, and so we knew that wasn't going very well. But we were relieved, at least he was alive. But when the war ended and he came home, wow,
Well, describe that. When he comes, were you there when he came home?
I was there, and I left within a week.
Mm-hmm.
He came here in U.S. from Japan on a troop ship, or some sort of a ship, I shouldn't say, probably a troop ship. And they went into Seattle, not Frisco. So he was sent to Rome, New York, Army Hospital in Rome, and he came through Dunkirk on the train, and it was for him. We got one weekend he was allowed to come home. By that time his eyesight had pretty much gone. He was able to see, he was able to read large print books very close, and he loved to read. He read voraciously. But he got home one weekend and it was, a wild time.
Wow.
But then he went back and then I left. And
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
Enlist?
I figured out of high school, I figured I would be drafted. Why wait?
Right.
So and that turned out to be a blessing in disguise. What I didn't know at the time.
This would have been what year?
45.
Okay.
It was a blessing in disguise because I didn't know at the time, but as it turned out, when a little conflict called Korea came along, guys who were in the reserves got immediately called up. And I was regular Army because I enlisted, I was RA.
Yeah.
So I didn't know anything about it. I mean, Korea, I didn't go in. But the guys, I knew a lot of guys who were in my outfit who got called in. The fact that I enlisted was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
Out of San Francisco and on the good old U.S. Army troop ship General Black.
General Black.
31 days from San Francisco to Yokohama.
Oh my gosh.
We ran through the tail end of a typhoon and couldn't get out of it. Of course, as you know, in those days there was no satellites or weather things. You just hit the tail end of the typhoon and we were there, booming. 7 days.
What was that like? I mean, my God.
Rough.
Were you sick?
I was not sick. Most of the guys on the ship were not sick. We're too damn scared. Really. Well, the ship was loaded with guys from Japan, or going to Japan, and to Korea.
Right.
But we didn't know. We got to Japan, we didn't get off the ship. I mean, those of us who were going into Japan.
So this would have been latter part of 45?
Yeah. September, late September.
Now, would you be part of the occupation? Was
Yes.
that the idea? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I was there for 20 months.
Wow.
Got out early because I was enlisted for 2 years, but they cut it short because of whatever reason. I got home 2 days before Christmas.
In
46.
1946?
No, 47 that was now. 47.
So what was your duties there when you got the... Were you in Tokyo? Were you...
I saw Tokyo, but we went way down south.
Okay.
Southern island of Kyushu, in a city called Beppu. I was a rifleman or infantryman in the 19th Infantry Regiment, 24th Infantry Division. So it came a point, I was like, I'm tired of this. You know, and of course, when you go to town, you had to have the buddy system. You had to go with a buddy, and one of you always carried a sidearm. We were afraid, you know, that as it turned out, there were never, ever, that I know of any incidents of GIs on leave downtown getting or just going to town for any incidents. But
What was the reaction among the natives? Was there any fraternization to speak of?
no, it was very calm. If I go on with my story, and I'll tell you, it'll come up.
Okay.
After a while of running, carrying a rifle, as they call it, I heard about a vacancy in the post office. So I talked to a guy who I knew, and he said, just go tell him he worked in the post office during Christmas vacation. I tried it, and they took me in. So I spent 6 to 8 months in the post office. Mm-hmm. My brother Tony had to sign a piece of paper which says he would not discuss what happened in PW camp.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
By whom? Who asked them to do that? The military?
None of the Americans, yeah.
Wow.
Because the reason for it is what I found out later. In fact, Linda Holmes told me that we wanted to make a friend out of Japan, and the Russians were still, that was during the Cold War, and we bordered on northern Japan where the Russians were bordered on too, on the other side. So we were afraid of the Russians invading Japan, so we wanted to make an ally of them, and we did, of course. I'm number 4.
Okay.
It was Tony, who was in, then David, a Marine, and he never saw any action, but he was lucky. He didn't. He was on his way to Guadalcanal, and ship stopped in Hawaii, and they were looking for particular skills and grabbed him, and he had it rough. He spent the war in Hawaii. But my brother in the Navy, he saw a bit of action, and then me, and then my younger brother in the Korean War. He was in during the Korean War. So we had 5 boys in the family, and all 5 of us served, which I'm very proud of.
Yeah. Did you guys have a reflection on the whole
No,
military?
not really. Except for my number 1 brother, who was a POW. We talked a lot about him, and we never talked too much about the war. We didn't.
Was that by design, or was it hard to do, or
No,
was it just another chapter?
Just didn't do it.
Yeah.
Except, as I said, when Raleigh Kidder interviewed him for his book. But Joe talked a lot about, he became a corpsman. He was a corpsman, and he didn't have too much to say, and we just accepted what was and got on with our lives. So,
What's the question I should be asking, Rocco Doino?
I really don't know, Greg. What's the question I should be asking? I should be asked. Do you have any regrets? Do you hate the Japanese?
Good questions.
I don't know.
Well, did your brother? Let's ask that question.
He addressed that with us, and I told you he lived in San Francisco for all through the winter, and then he'd come back in the summer. But he knew he had some Japanese friends in San Francisco, and as you know, the big Japanese community there in that West Coast. He said, well, we got along well, but one day over a glass of wine, I don't think I can ever forgive him.
This is the symbol of the American Defenders of Bataan and Corregidor, and they gave me a little gold-plated one as a gesture of recognition of all that I have tried to do and am still trying to do to help them feel that we appreciate what they did and we appreciate their suffering, because I don't think many of them feel that way. So
Well,
that's it.